If you're catching this live or replay, this is where it starts. Today, we'll be talking about why you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. I didn't realize this at the time, but I wasn't choosing partners. I was choosing people I thought I could help. And I thought that meant I was loving well. But sometimes you have to acknowledge that you don't have all the information. You may come from a place of good intention, but ultimately you don't know what the other person may or may not be thinking, whether they actually want your help or whether they feel like you're trying to get something out of them or that you want something from them or some sort of, I guess, maybe attention or something from helping them. And so some people are used to transactional relationships, meaning I do this for you, you do that for me. I actually had a relative who would always say, I did this for you, so now you owe me. Nobody owes anyone anything, right? We do things because we want to do things. We do things because we want to help people, not because we are expecting something in return. Because it's not a good place to be able to barter with people, right? It's people's lives, especially people that are suffering, people that are hurt, people that are getting harmed. That can be really a difficult scenario. Hello, today we're talking about you can't save someone who wants to be saved. Welcome, Haley. So I used to believe that if I loved someone enough, they would change. But I learned something the hard way. Let me tell you about the moment that it clicked. The moment that it clicked was when I actually had someone, welcome, Austin. So it happened when I had a relative that I loved a lot. And this person had developed cancer and they were going through cancer treatments and things like that. Sometimes they would go, sometimes they wouldn't go. I was thinking that I wanted to save this person, that I wanted to talk to them about how their life was valuable, how it was important, and how they should do what they needed to do to be able to get through the scenario, right? They needed to be able to survive. And so I wanted to try to approach them and talk to them about how important it was. But this person didn't really have a survival instinct, right? They were kind of a doom and gloom, stick their head in the sand type of person. And I thought that if I could explain to them how important it was, that they be around to see their kids and their grandkids and everything else, that would make them understand, that would give them like a reason to live, right? But ultimately, what I was missing is there are people who, for whatever reason, don't have the survival instinct. They don't want their survival instinct. They want to stick their heads in the sand and hope that things are going to get better, right? And so the effort wasn't there. I was trying to do whatever I could do to help that person, but they did not have the effort that it took to be able to do what needed to be done to fight this battle. Because as many of you know who've experienced cancer in your family or friends or otherwise, it's not an easy battle to win. And if you can't just sit there and you just can't sit there and let it just go, right? You actually have to put in the effort, right? And so ultimately, if they're not going to put in the effort because they don't feel it's necessary or they don't feel that it's worth it, then there's nothing that you can do to convince them. There's nothing that you can do to get them ready. You know what I mean? So, I mean, literally, like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can lead a horse to food, you can't make it eat, right? And it's sad and it's hard. And a perspective that it's a relative that you love and you care for, and you've seen that they don't have survival instinct, that they just would rather just, and at times they've said things like, if I weren't here, I think things would be better. No, they would not be better. They would not be better. That's not what we say. That's not what we say. And then finally I thought about it. I was like, that person has the right to live their life as they see fit. Even though I love them, even though I want to protect them, even though I want more time with them, if they don't want it, they don't want it. I can't force them to do something that they don't want to do, right? Because that's what I want. But guess what? I don't want people trying to run my life either. But I want to say there are so many good things that you have going on. But until they see it and they want it and they put forth the effort, nothing's going to happen. So if somebody, has this disease and they're like, let's say they have cancer, for instance, and they're like, yeah, I'm just not going to treat it. That is unfortunately not my ability to say, yeah, you're going to treat it, because guess what? It's their life, their choices. They decide what happens in their life, just like I and you and all of us decide what we do in our lives. You can't want change more than the person that you're trying to help does, because ultimately they're the ones in charge. They're the ones that are going to have to put forth the effort. No one is going to do every single thing for that person. And if that person, if their biggest deadly sin, so to speak, is being a sloth, then they're likely not going to put one step in front of the other, but they're going to talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. And this particular person has always, always, always made promises that they weren't able to follow through with. Probably because it required time, it required effort, it required doing something, getting up, moving, being active, and so you have to kind of look at the person's personality. And some people feel like, hey, things are worth it or things aren't worth it, and it oftentimes depends on the encouragement you have, the mental acuity that you have, your willpower, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to endure to get the life that you want. And oftentimes the people that want it the most aren't the actual people. They're the people who love the person because they want more time with that person. They want to heal them. They want to protect them. And then you think about people who some have issues with depression or anxiety. A lot of them are just tired. For whatever reason, they're tired. They're tired of being beat down, or if you've experienced trauma can definitely change your mind, where you feel like things aren't what they should be, and you want your life to be better. Maybe you're lonely and you feel like, well, I'm not dating anyone right now. I'm not with anyone right now. Like, this is what's going on, and this is my life, right? Thank you, Jackie. And so welcome, guys. And so that can be extremely difficult to navigate that, to feel like someone is literally giving up before your very eyes. And you're like, you have so much more life to give. You have so many experiences, and then they switch back and forth between, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to start doing this and things are going to be better and I'm getting more motivated and I'm doing this. And, all the while, they're just telling you what you want to hear. Same person is also like, could you do this for me? Could you do this for me? Could you do this for me? And ultimately, I think a lot of that is learned helplessness, right? Learned helplessness, because they're used to people doing things for them. They don't want to do things for themselves. And so can't necessarily fight cancer for someone, or fight anything for anyone. You just got to keep going and keep doing what you're doing, And the other thing I think that it's important to acknowledge, when you're in a scenario like this where you want to save others, It's because you have an abundance of empathy. It's because you care about other people. You have compassion. It's because you love others to a fault. But know this, empathy does not equal responsibility. And some of us have been taking responsibility since we were children, for our parents, for our siblings, for other relatives. We've wanted to try to save so many people. And the thing is about it, it's almost parentification. Maybe you were a person who constantly took care of your parents when you were growing up as a young child. I had mentioned yesterday in my live how I would always say to my relative, I would say, "You promise you won't get mad," because I had an honest question that I wanted an answer to. And this relative would always say, "Oh yeah, I won't get mad." And then of course they would blow up and get super mad because I asked what they deemed to be a rude question, which is a 4 or 5-year-old child. They do ask questions, right? They ask all sorts of questions. They want to know how the world works. I mean, that's the normal thing. And so ultimately, that bond was kind of broken when somebody says they're not going to get mad and then they blow up, right? Because that's the opposite of what you said you were going to do. And then someone had suggested that I was gaslighting my parent. Well, I'm sorry. I might be smart, but I'm not smart enough at 4 years old to know what gaslighting was. I had no clue what gaslighting was. And it's really actually kind of a funny concept about how gaslighting came to be. There was a movie, I think it was called like Pilot, I can't remember exactly what it was called. I think it was actually called Gaslighting. But essentially what would happen is the husband it was back when they had the old like pilot lights. And so the husband would sneak downstairs in the basement when the wife didn't know he was there. And he would let out the pilot light or blow out the pilot light. Well, he kept accusing her of it. And the first time she was like, absolutely didn't do it. Second time, absolutely didn't do it. But the thing about gaslighting is the more that you present it to the person, the less resistance they offer after a while. It's almost like if you hear things so many times, then you start believing them, right? You almost are like, am I confused? Did I mess up? And you think about it. The other thing that it subtly does is it destroys your trust in yourself. You start wondering and doubting, could I have done that? Did I do that? And a lot of people prey on that, as well as then projection. Oftentimes people tell on themselves because they are projecting something that they did onto you. And you know yourself that you didn't do that. But yet if they keep telling you and telling you and telling you and telling you, and it's crazy how many manipulative people are actually out there this day and age. You know what I mean? They want to triangulate. They want to try to confuse. It's like, I don't know. It's crazy out there sometimes. You know what I mean? And ultimately, we just got to keep fighting the good fight, keep, working to do what we can do. And I also want to mention, I know I may have mentioned previously, I have a podcast on here. I have 2 podcasts on here. One is Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress. So if any of you are interested in like family roles, scapegoat, golden child, the other ones, I'm drawing a blank for a second, sorry. Feel free to check that out. And then the other one is Grace and Gavel, Where Truth Meets Compassion. It's a true crime podcast. Then Scott Peterson, the Menendez brothers, Susan Smith, Darla, Scott Peterson, some other older crimes that you may have known about, the chessboard murders, the Zodiac, Richard Ramirez, John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, those, if you're kind of interested in those. And I don't go into like gory details or things like that. The Memphis 3, those are kind of interesting cases. But yeah, so just throwing that out there. But I think that ultimately too, and then also, we can also talk about something else here briefly. I also did a video on, or excuse me, a live on wounded birds. And I think that that ties into people who don't want to be saved. And so this is called, I Didn't See Red Flags, I Saw Wounds. And essentially it was about, I didn't realize this at the time, but I wasn't choosing partners. I was choosing people that I thought that I could help, that I could save. And I thought that that meant that I was loving well, that I was doing what I was called to do, that I was helping others because I had experienced trauma. I had experienced, and I didn't want other people to experience what I had experienced. And so wounded birds look like people who have experienced a lot of trauma. They look like people who are kind of down and out. They look like people who don't really have a big support system, which is really sad in this day and age, like, family or friends or anything like that. And oftentimes they're like kind of couch surfing because they don't really have anywhere to go. Maybe they've moved multiple times because when they were growing up, that's what they did. They also sometimes can be manipulative. They can exaggerate like their stories or try to prey on people who are empathetic. And so there's kind of this relationship between wounded birds and empaths because generally empaths are very open to other people's suffering and want to try to prevent it and want to try to help it. And sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it ends up in kind of an uneven kind of dynamic where you end up finding out why this person likely doesn't have a lot of people around them. In my case, someone that I had helped once actually ended up being a person who was literally like a pathological liar. Like he had a lot of problems with telling the truth. He had a lot of issues with exaggerating things and trying to triangulate things that just caused a lot of drama. Um, and it was extremely painful. And then he, at one point, got very, very nasty when it came to a point about discussing things. He was always just like, well, I'm going to list your flaws and I'm going to tell you your flaws. And I'm like, you know what? I'm a very self aware person. I know what my flaws are before you can even tell me. So I don't need you to tell me. I'm good. But we are not good. And so that was something that kind of made me think that, it was a scenario where it's like this person was here for what they could get, which I didn't have a lot, but I did want to be a kind person and be a helpful person, and then at one other point he had borrowed my car and somebody was like, oh, did you get that from him? And I was like, no, this is my car. Like, it's not his car. I let him use it once. It's not his car, and you realize that he's trying to kind of grift and shift and do things like that, which is not cool at all. um, and so empathy pulls you in because you are a good person. And ultimately, there has to be some sort of balance. Like, we can't trust like everything that someone says, especially not fully knowing who that person is, because knowing that person takes time. And oftentimes, who they present to be in the honeymoon period is much different than who they actually present to be otherwise, right? And so that can be really difficult. And also, sometimes we confuse potential with reality because um, empathetic people are very optimistic and they want to believe the best in others. So they see potential in everyone. But is there always potential in everyone? Because sometimes people present who they want you to see, not who they actually are, not their warts, not their mean tendencies or narcissistic tendencies. And oftentimes, childhood wounds can cause people to want to help others because they know what it feels like to experience that pain, to experience that hurt, to experience that trauma. And so that can be really difficult to deal with. And so, have you ever looked back and realized that you were trying to help someone more than they were trying to help themselves? And that can almost feel like a slap in the face, especially if if you're giving your time to them and you're wanting to help them and you're wanting to give them progress and encouragement. But yet they're just sitting there like, okay, what else are you going to do for me? Could you give me some money? Could you, buy me some cigarettes? Could you, any number of things you can think of. Give me some alcohol. I don't know. Um, but ultimately, it can definitely be a mismatched experience. Um, and so that can be really difficult to try to navigate, trying to help someone, and then also trying to, you know, not go in that. You know what I mean? So, guys, I just want to say that I am doing this from now on. I'm going live on TikTok at noon, and then I go live on YouTube at 12:30 or thereof. So stay tuned for that. We deal with various other topics as well. And I just want to say thank you all from the bottom of my heart for tuning in. It means a lot to me. And I hope that you'll come back and see me soon. And if you have any topics you want to hear about, feel free to let me know. My Recovering Perfectionist Mama page is a psychology page. And then I have the true crime, which is Grace and Gavel, all housed on YouTube. So thank you for tuning in. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And I hope you'll come back and see me again soon. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.